Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is OddJob here. In today's episode, love to give you my thoughts on the latest episode of Inside Star Citizen. Let's go ahead and get started.
The 300i is going to be the test bed for the customization system that we're rolling out soon. These kind of customization options that we've been wanting to do for a long time, like coloring, extra parts, racing parts, and you can intermix all these parts together, including all the colors that we have. So yeah, it's all very exciting. It's going to give a lot of options to the player.
So we've been expecting this patch for quite a while now, and it's definitely going to be very interesting once we start customizing our own ships. As they gave us a demonstration of what you can do on the 300i, I was actually very surprised that there wasn't more modding on the outside of the ship, because most people, when they're passing by, they're going to see the outside of the ship more than they see the inside of the ship. I'm sure as a player you would like to customize the interior, but you can only see the interior, while on the exterior, if you're in a very busy area, there's going to be a lot of people that can actually see modifications on the outside. They did show off paint jobs, and in this particular picture that I'm going to show you right here, I'm really glad that they demonstrated that you can actually put lettering and logos onto the ship. It's not just a paint job. That means hopefully we're going to be able to do guild logos or some limited sayings on the ship itself. As far as the interior, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people playing around with that. The only thing that I really want to say about this is that I hope they open up to the community, in which the community can design and add things and put it into the game through a submission process, and maybe even do a little revenue sharing. I think that would be completely awesome. I think in the future this is definitely going to be a revenue generating feature for CIG. I see no reason why they shouldn't sell cosmetics to kind of spiffy up your ship. It really doesn't give anybody an advantage, and people like to customize their things, so this should be a win-win situation for everybody. So I'm really hoping it goes really well, and again, I'm hoping that they open it up to the community and do some revenue sharing, where there is a lot of creative people out there, and I'm sure if you give them a chance to revenue share or just allow them to add to the collection, you're going to get some really cool things out of the community.
Here we have a medium power plant. It's been opened up so you can see the interior and the sub-items within. One of the functions of having an interior is so that you can replace and change about the sub-items within. We have these mechanisms that open up and display the sub-items in front of the player so you can pull them out and put new ones in. The idea is that over time these become worn and eventually destroyed. That's why you need to replace them.
Now, when they're talking about components and subcomponents, it really shows you the depth of Star Citizen and what they're trying to do, which is kind of crazy, because you're just going to have so much that you're going to have to keep track of on your ships, especially large capital ships. In my opinion, I think on large capital ships, NPCs are going to become mandatory, because if you have a whole bunch of these components around and every one of them needs maintenance, who wants to do it as a player? But as an NPC who's getting paid, you can see them walking around the ship, doing diagnosis, repairing things, and it would definitely make the ships feel a lot livelier, which is something they've already talked about in Squadron 42 when they were talking about the Idris. So it's one of those things where I think this component type stuff is going to feed other systems, and it's going to require NPCs to kind of glue it all together for us, because otherwise I think there might be a little bit too much to our ships, and it might become more of a chore rather than a fun game to play with. One thing that I hope they do is allow for vintage components. In other words, over the years it could be the same component, but the styling of it changes, and if you keep that component and you keep it together really well and you keep refurbishing it or remanufacturing it, you can actually have like a vintage component. It's not going to be any better or any worse from a component in a later year, but it's just going to be a styling change, in which case it will be kind of unique. This is going off into a slight tangent, but one thing that I would love to see is like a 300i that was manufactured on 2949 and it had this specific style, and then when it went to 2050 or maybe 2051, it skipped a year, the manufacturers changed the styling a little bit. So that means the people that bought the 300i in 2049, they had one type of styling, and the people that bought the 300i in 2951, they have a slightly different 300i. They both can do the exact same thing. It's just the styling change. But what this would allow for, as Star Citizen moves on in years, you will start getting some vintage ships. Some of them may be really well maintained, which is really cool. Some of them may become jalopies, but they're jalopies of that year. So it kind of feels like what we have in the current world, in which every ship model every once in a while will get a facelift or slight modifications to them, thereby making some of the older ships vintage vintage ships, which people might want, but I'm sure there's some part of the population that will hold on to those ships, make them into vintage ships, and at that point we can actually see a greater diversification of ships out in the universe, but they're really a part of all the same line. It's just that over the years they've kind of morphed, which is, what happens in real life. Okay, in the last segment, I'm definitely not going to talk to you about plants because there's nothing that I really want to say about that. But for me, it definitely confirms the fact that pretty much the developers right now for CIG is completely off limits. It's all about the art right now because I think all the developers are heads down trying to get 3.6 coded. You can see a lot of work being done, but they're behind because they spent so much time in 3.5, and this is why we're getting so much art. In fact, in the last episode when they were talking about component damage, you can see that they have a lot of work that they need to accomplish, and they were just trying to get that segment filmed so that they can get back to work. Things are getting to the point where I think they actually have to reevaluate that whole timeline again, because what I'm seeing on the roadmap is they're definitely putting the vast majority of the resources on the persistent universe, but the Squadron 42 side is now suffering. So I don't think it's a very good balance, but this is something that's very interesting to keep track of, and we'll see where this goes throughout the year, because I definitely don't think they're going to be able to catch up and try to finish everything that was on the roadmap initially. So that's all I have this week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
And that's exactly what I said in the first episode. Yeah.